Hello, my name is Cooper Parsley, and I am a student at East Texas A&M University. I decided to do my presentation over the Colorado River water crisis because it is very relevant and a current issue. Another reason I chose this topic is because of how much we take water for granted, thinking that we will never run out. According to CalMatters.org, over the last several years, the Colorado River Basin that supplies water to 40 million people and supports massive agricultural regions has been experiencing drought and dangerously lower water levels in Lake Mead and Lake Powell than usual. In 2023 through 2024, the federal government ordered states to reduce usage. There has also been talk about making these negotiations for 2026 long term and having more strict guidelines continuing through 2025. According to the Nature Conservancy, this crisis impacts urban water supply, agriculture, hydropowering, wildlife ecosystems, and tribal communities. It impacts urban water supply due to the mandatory restriction put on cities. Cities in Arizona, Nevada, California, Colorado, Utah, and New Mexico and Wyoming all rely on this river as a water source. The federal government has had to cut their water supply usage in order to conserve what they can because of the historically low river levels. Some cities in Arizona have already had their water reduced to their houses, businesses, landscaping, and new construction developments. This can also put a growth limit on new housing. They can no longer guarantee long-term water availability, which has caused the fast-growing towns to slow down on new developments. Cutting the water supply has also led to raising the water bills to fund conservation programs, pay for alternative water sources, and reduce demand. According to the WaterEducationColorado.org, it impacts agriculture because farmers use about 70% of the river's water. When that water source lowers, they receive far less than what they are legally allowed. As states impose these mandatory cuts, farmers must reduce crop yields or switch to less water-intensive crops. This threatens the production of major foods like lettuce, alfalfa, cotton, and vegetables grown in Arizona and California. This has also led to rising costs for farmers. They are having to pay more for pumping groundwater, upgrading irrigation systems, and buying additional water rights or switching to different crops. According to the CircleOfBlue.org, the Colorado River crisis significantly reduces hydropower production because Lake Mead and Powell have dropped to historically low levels, leaving less water pressure to spin the turbines and generate electricity. As water levels fall, the dams produce less power, making energy supplies less reliable and more expensive for the people who demand them. If it drops below a certain level, the turbines can't run at all and become completely useless. This Pacific River helps generate electricity at places like the Hoover Dam. This water crisis is clearly not just about drinking water, but about farming and power too. This crisis will also directly impact wildlife ecosystems by reducing the river flow as well. It has also shrunk the wetland habitats as well as changed the natural habitats that fish, birds, and plants depend on. Lower water levels and warmer temperatures disrupt their breeding cycles, increase fish die-offs, and allow invasive species like mussels to spread more easily. According to the WaterEducationColorado.org, wetland areas that once supported birds and other endangered species are drying up, and changes in the water quality make it harder for native species to survive. Lastly, the Colorado River water crisis affects tribal communities because many tribes depend on the river for drinking water, agricultural and cultural practices, and economic development. As the river flow declines, tribes face increased difficulty irrigating crops, supporting livestock, and fishing. Here are some of the changes of water professionals such as water managers, hydrologists, and policymakers. The river itself is over-allocated, meaning the river is currently claimed by more states than the river actually can produce for. Climate change is also a big impact because as the temperature rises, the less the water flows. Population growth that seems unending has caused an additional strain on the water supply even before it was at lower levels. Cities like Phoenix, Arizona, Las Vegas, Nevada, Denver, Colorado, and Los Angeles, California keep expanding past what the Colorado River can supply for. Agriculture takes a large portion of the river's water to continue the farming practices in these areas. Cutting this water supply means cutting food production. Another issue is there are 7 states plus Mexico plus tribal nations that are all demanding from this water supply. Political negotiations between this many parties is a huge struggle. It isn't just 2 or 3 people having to find a solution and agree to terms, which would be much simpler. Here are some of the solutions that have already been proposed by professionals. As I said before, the mandatory water reduction has been created across the mentioned states using the Colorado River water. According to the Institute of Energy and Environment, there have also been conservation programs put in place in an effort to help. Cities are replacing laws with concrete or artificial grass that doesn't need watering. There are irrigation limits in place, and household efficiency upgrades are being done to combat the water shortage. Things such as drip systems and soil moisture sensors are improving irrigation efficiency. They have also worked really hard to increase water rows and recycling when possible. Now for my idea and suggestions for the solution. Of course, I am not an expert, but these are things that I have thought of that could be beneficial to combat these issues. One creative idea that I could help is to pay farmers in these areas to grow more water-efficient crops that benefit urban cities. Instead of buying water from farmers, we could shift the economy itself. Imagine replacing several acres of alfalfa that requires a significant amount of water to crops that use half the water and double the profit. Cities could invest in those transitions the same way they invest in their own infrastructure. That way, these two can combine forces instead of 2 groups fighting over the same shrinking river. Another outside-the-box idea is something people have not explored yet. What if we could use underground water vaults? Basically, there are giant underground formations like empty aquifers or old mining caves that could act as long-term water storage. When the river has extra flow during bigger storms, instead of the water rushing away and disappearing, it could be stored underground, where it won't evaporate and run off. Then, when we are in the drought periods, the stored water could be pumped back into the system and used in several ways. It could massively reduce how much water we lose to heat and evaporations during hotter months, especially. Another idea that I had that might be an option in the future is floating solar panels placed in the reservoirs. Not only would they generate clean electricity, but they would literally shade the water to reduce evaporation as well. Lake Mead loses billions of gallons of water every year just from the sun, according to the Colorado River Science.org. Covering even part of the reservoir with solar panels could save huge amounts of water and produce power at the same time. It would be a great way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So what is my takeaway? The Colorado River crisis affects way more than simple drinking water problems. It affects cities, farms, power generation, wildlife, and tribal communities. It is a reminder and proof that water is not infinite, and we all have a responsibility to consider the ways and amount we are using. Thanks for listening, and maybe the next time you turn on your water at your home, you'll at least think about where the water actually comes from.